God have mercy on us all. Did I screw that up?
And you can get Listen Up for only $14.99.
I'm excited. So we are at the. I always look at Jeff when I talk. This is just the way it goes because it gives me something. Yeah, it's not quite so odd when you're especially when you're a place like this. So we are at Hilton Americas Hotel in Houston, Texas, and the Texas Annual Conference is meeting. We're one of the first annual conferences to meet, I think, in the U.S. We're always pretty early, and I'm joined with three amazing people because we're going to talk about God doing a new thing, right? And you three are a part of starting new churches in the Texas Conference. There have been a lot of disaffiliations, and we've spent a lot of time talking about that. But I want to hear from you and the good things God's doing with you in this new day. So we'll take a minute and introduce yourself, and then we'll come back around and share some stories. So, David, why don't we start with you? Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, my name is David Briggs, and I'm been appointed to a new faith community in the Houston Hobby area, which is at the Glenbrook United Methodist Church area. That is where we will be launching our new faith community, which is a remnant of persons who want to remain UMC, which will be our beginning core group that we're going to launch with. I'm excited about this opportunity. Our first Sunday will be this Sunday, June 4th at 10:30, and it'll be the culmination of a lot of work that went before me, and a lot of support from the district, Central South District, a lot of support from the conference, a lot of support from individuals and clergy. The support has been overwhelming.
That's great.
But we're looking forward to an exciting launch.
That's great. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. Jennifer, how about you?
Yeah, so we're Bryan Community Church. We're a United Methodist congregation. We are only 5 months old. We started worshiping the very first Sunday of December, and we are in Bryan College Station, and it's just really cool because, we started out with a remnant of folks, but we have been able to reach out in the community in just a short period of time, and we're starting to bring in other folks who are seeking, which is the whole purpose and point of what we do as Christians, is to reach those who don't know Jesus. And so, it's fun planting a new church. I've never done this before, so I will say that we laugh. We call it it's an animal all on its own, just because it is so different than as a United Methodist pastor being appointed to a church with a building, with people, with a budget, but we're starting from the ground up, and God is being faithful and providing all the people and the resources that we need. And I just want to celebrate, not only is the conference been incredibly supportive and colleagues like y'all, we have churches within our community who are very encouraging outside of the denomination. And in fact, the First Presbyterian Church of Bryan, when they knew that we needed a place to land, they opened up their hearts and their doors. So we are actually worshiping right now in the fellowship hall of a Presbyterian church.
That's awesome.
So Methodists and Presbyterians, you know what? We put our denominations aside and remember that Christ is what unites us, and that is what is keeping us going as we launch.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So I'm Schuler Sitch, and like David and Jennifer, I got appointed to this new faith community that launched in November. Before they even had a pastor, they gathered themselves, kind of in the wake of disaffiliation, and I got appointed there the first week of Advent and have been there ever since. And last week we chartered as Mosaic United Methodist Church, and it's just been a really exciting time, I think, in the life of the church, and being able to do these things in church planning and these new expressions, and such a season that was so hard. These expressions of hope that I think we get the privilege to see more than anyone else, right now, and just the work that we get to do, and I just feel so honored to do that. But we're meeting at Blyle Middle School over in the northwest quadrant of Houston, kind of like where Cypress, Spring, and Tomball all kind of mesh together.
290 corridor.
Yeah. And so, no, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. Jennifer called it an animal. I like to say we're building the plane as we fly it each and every Sunday. Something is going to go wrong, and so we just find out what that new thing is every week.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's been incredibly rewarding. So
that's great. So David, you talk about the support. I'd be interested in here. I mean, a lot of times when we used to start churches, they were like parachute drops. You go in cold and you spend a couple of years, and now churches are starting in different ways. I think some of these churches are starting because the church is disaffiliated and they want to remain United Methodist. But there's more to it than that, I think, as well. As communities get established, I'm hearing that, so you talked about more people. I'd be interested in hearing kind of just how the process worked for you. How did you get involved in this? How did this come on your radar? How did it start?
Well, of course, it always starts with a phone call. And with that offer being made, I think we're in a time where, what's happening in the church is kind of reflective to what's happening in the country. There's just this a hunger for change, hunger for something new. We've gone through so many crises that people are looking for something different. And so I think the appetite, you're talking about the difference between starting new churches now and maybe in the past. I just think the appetite and the timing is right for doing something new, because we've experienced so many challenges so far. So when that phone call came, based on what I was doing in East Texas, which was kind of like an incubator for me to try new things and experiment with new things, we were able to build an education facility. We were able to partner with a health clinic, which a federally qualified health clinic that really helps low-income people get access to health care. We was able to partner with them and lease some of our property to them and do community health projects. So I was really able to kind of see what it's like to come into a community and start new things. We started several new things. And so when the phone call came, it just seemed like all the timing was right for me, for the United Methodist Church, for me to easily say, okay, yes, I'll accept that opportunity. And so what I was surprised with was that the district really put a lot of effort in helping to plan a lot of these things and get a lot of the front end work, the preliminary work done before we got there. As a lot of us new church starters know, when you start a new church, all of your work is on the front end. And so I was grateful that there was already laity and staff and district and conference and staff that did a lot of that front end labor. It's still a lot to be done, but we didn't have to just start from the dirt, start from shaking a hand with people at a coffee shop. We were able to step into something that was somewhat already together.
Bishop Harvey here has been talking about connectionalism, right? Yeah. And the power of the connection, and you bear witness to that. I think one of the things I've heard, there's a couple of things you mentioned that are fascinating to me. One is like new and innovative ways of doing ministry in the world, and instead of the sort of the old 20th century model of we build this building and everybody kind of comes to it, there's new funding models, there's new hybrid ministries with childcare and health clinics and things that are helping people in the community, because I think that's going to be a really important thing. The fact that you have experience in that, I think is going to be really amazing to see. I mean, I'm going to be interested in learning from you, because I think that's the way that things are going to go in the future. If churches are going to be relevant, they got to be relevant where people's needs are in the community. So that's amazing. And the church, does it have a name yet?
We have an unofficial name, which is more descriptive than it is, identifying who we are. Yeah. But it's the New Faith Community Houston Hobby, the United Methodist Church of the. Wait a minute, let me get it right. Some of my New Faith colleagues know what I'm struggling with. So it's United Methodist New Faith Community Houston Hobby. That's what we are right now. Until we charter, So it's a long descriptor until your people come together and say we need a real name. Exactly. That's where we are. Yeah. That's awesome. So Jennifer, for people who don't know, my son-in-law knows because he's a graduate of Texas A&M, right? So College Station, Bryan College Station, they're basically like
right there together, and that is where Texas A&M University is. And the church in Bryan disaffiliated, and we have a good friend, Matthew Marchetti, who is originally from Chapelwood. And was very involved in a lot of the process. He is a special dude in many ways.
He has been so supportive of this new church plant. Absolutely.
That's great. Yeah, but I just want to hear from you, like, in the community and getting this started. What does it look like for you in the starting? How did this one start in Bryan?
Sure, absolutely. So it's been interesting to watch and to learn, and I am not afraid to say that I have been a student in the new church plant process. But so it started after the disaffiliation of another church, and we of course are still grieving because we have friends and family members who are worshiping just now in another location, and we're worshiping in a new location. But there were a group of people who didn't want to leave the United Methodist Church. And I say this all the time, and I'm going to say it to y'all, that we are a church that's purple. And if you can follow me in this regard, we have people who are Democrats and we have people who are Republicans, and we have decided that it doesn't matter what our political affiliation is, that we are going to stay together. And I use that as the example that on various hot topic subjects, we have people who sit on both sides. But at the end of the day, we are going to look across the table and we are going to see that they are a child of God and that God has created them, and it's Christ who unites us. And so that is the foundation that has started this new church, and that's where we are. And so folks wanted to stay together, and they said, all right, let's start this new church. And of course, the conference wanted to have a United Methodist presence in the city of Bryan, where there was an empty space after the disaffiliation, and so that's kind of the basis of where we started.
You had lay people. I just know from Matthew, there was a passion, to do something right
absolutely.
away. There was a fire in the belly.
Well, I mean, folks were ready and they were waiting, and it was sad for a moment because we had folks who they didn't know where they were going to go because this was their home for so long. And so, of course, I wasn't appointed until after the disaffiliation. And honestly, there was a time period I wasn't sure what we were going to do because I didn't know what the old church was going to do. And so, but shortly after, I'm just really thankful for the conference and Steve Woody, who said, okay, we've got to do something. There's a group of hurting people who still want to be United Methodist. What are we going to do? Will you lead them? And I, of course, was my answer.
That's awesome. And Schuler, your story is interesting because it wasn't like you went in and started a church.
No.
The people rose up and started a church, and then they're like, we need somebody. Tell that story about how.
Yeah, so they met for the very first time on All Saints Sunday in 2022, and they gathered together for this time to celebrate All Saints, but to also grieve what they had lost in that time. And it started off just as one worship service, and I don't even know to this day if there was any intention to come back the next week. But Godfrey Hubert was really important in organizing those folks and providing a space. And so they came together, and then they met the next week and the next week. And I got a call from Morris Mathis a couple weeks after that asking if this is something I'd be interested in. Now, an important detail here is we had a 2-month-old. My wife had just started a new job. We were in this really big transition time of our life. And so when I got the phone call, I was like, I don't know if this is the right time for me to be able to step in and do this. But we went out to lunch, my wife and I, with Morris, and talked about some of the possibilities and the excitement of what was happening in that community. And we got back in the car, and Sarah, my wife, looked at me immediately and said, we need to do this. And that was, a big push for me, is if she's on board for this, I'm on board for this. And so yeah, it's been this, we announced our new name a couple weeks ago before we were chartered in Mosaic, and that has a lot of meaning for who we are and who we want to be. That this place started as a mosaic of these broken fragments coming together from all these different churches in the Northwest Houston area that had different identities, different histories, different backgrounds. but they all use those pieces to come together. And kind of like Jennifer was saying, we have people who are all over the spectrum, whether it be politically or socially, but when we come together, it's this sense of you belong here. Like, you're not only welcomed in this space, but you belong to this community, and we want you here, and we want your voice and your witness and your testimony, and that's something that's going to be essential for us going forward, is to continue building that mosaic and allowing for there always to be at least a couple more spaces available for someone to place their tile in that mosaic.
That's
too.
fascinating. So I want to ask you all something. An older pastor said this to me recently, and I didn't know how I felt about it. I don't think it made me happy, but I'm not Maggie, but thank you. Lean in a little closer.
Yeah.
But what he said was, when we were talking about these new churches that were starting, and he made this kind of throwaway comment that I didn't like. He said, "Well, that's just horrible. You're just starting a church with a bunch of angry people who left their church. It's like it's a bunch of disgruntled people." And the reason it struck me wrong is because I was like, that is not at all what this is happening. Because I've seen that before, where disgruntled people leave and start a church. These are folks who, they were not disgruntled, and they didn't leave. It felt to them like they were shown the door. And in a couple of these churches I know, even around your area, it really has not been a hospitable thing to some people. It's basically said, for all intents and purposes, we don't really want y'all here. How do you feel about that? And talk about kind of the spirit of what's happening with you, with AR. This is not a group of disgruntled church members who are troublemakers, wanting to leave their church. And how is that different versus maybe if that was the case? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Now you know why it didn't make me happy when they said.
No, I certainly wouldn't identify it as starting churches with disgruntled people. Probably another way of looking at this is understanding that the people who are coming to be a part of this new faith community, I like to look at their resilience. It's not easy to leave a church and a congregation that you've been a part of, that your children and your grandchildren have been baptized in, that you may have come down the aisle and joined that church and made membership vows, and they don't take that lightly. So it was very challenging and difficult for a lot of these persons to walk away from that, because that church decided to leave the denomination and they wanted to remain faithful to their membership vows to the United Methodist Church. And so that's, I may not say that they're disgruntled, but I would say that these are hurt people. These are broken people. But these are people who take their membership vows seriously, and they take the connection seriously, and they want to remain part of that connection, even if it means stepping into the unknown, even if it means doing something they have never done before, that wasn't on their playbook when they got ready to retire, or when they, in this season in their life, they didn't imagine that they would be doing this, but they're doing it out of a deeper commitment to something bigger than themselves. And it's these kinds of person that I'm glad to have a part of our faith community.
And I have to lift up what you said. So I have a couple, they're 95 years old. So if you say, like you're sharing that they're committed, I mean, and for a 95-year-old couple to say, we are not leaving our denomination and we are not going to be divided, I think that says something and speaks to how bold and courageous they are. And they give me hope, and they have given our other members hope who are stepping out, and basically they're pioneers in their faith right now, because they're saying, we're not quite sure what the future holds for us. We've never planted a church before, but if they can do it, gosh, we can do it too. And so I'm with you, David. I'm celebrating it.
And I think too, anger has never been something that I've felt. It's kind of like what you guys are saying of the key emotion that I think I saw, especially at the very beginning, was grief. And that is still grief work that we're doing to this very day, of this place that was home to these people, like for people who are 95 for like 60 plus years. They've never known anything different and always wanted to be there. And I think grief is still really prevalent, but there's this sense of joy and hope too that is so present here. And it would be one thing if, people who are angry came together to form this new church, because if you're angry, you have these emotions of control that kind of rear their ugly head at times too. And if angry people came together, it would be all these different former church people coming together saying, this is the way we want to do things, that we've always done things. But I never hear, that excuse of, we've always done it this way, because we've never done anything together this way. And I think there's such excitement in being able to try new things and inspire like new witness of what church can be and what the United Methodist Church can be like in Texas and throughout the country and the world. And I mean, we get to see that every single day. And so, I push back a lot on that claim too of the angriness. I don't see that.
I think it's a very different day and a very different context to the people that we're talking about. And it seems like to me, because I've met with a couple of these groups, just to hear from them, whether it was in the Conroe or in different groups. And what you do hear is, sometimes there's a little anger because they feel like their church was taken away from them. But it really was grief, and it was all about looking to the future. One of the things I think it's hard, well, you said something I think is fascinating. Chapelwood is very much, it's very important to us too, is when you say purple church, is we have Republicans and Democrats, we have conservatives and liberals, we have traditionalists and progressives, and it's been very important for us to say, this is who we are, this is who United Methodists have been. We haven't always been perfect at what we do, but we really want to hold that tension together around grace. And I think that's a thing we're going to continue to struggle with. But it's interesting to me when you say that, because some of these areas we're located in, well, where you're located is a very conservative area of Texas, right? And so to think that there's a safe place for people who come together, and I think the great witness is that we are people that have differences in maybe interpretation on non-essentials, right? We want to be at work for justice. We want to be at work for inclusion, even though we may not always agree with people that we're working that out with. But being able to be one body of Christ, when the Bishop Harvey did the communion last night, one loaf, one cup, one in ministry together, one keeps showing up in the liturgy. And it's a powerful thing. What are you hopeful about? David, your service starts, so y'all have had a preview service or any kind of gathering?
This is our first.
This is your first week.
Launch.
And so when we talk about what are you hopeful for in the future, you're like stoked, right? I would imagine.
Yeah, I am. I'm looking. So, we've been hearing rumblings about people who are excited about coming. And people who are saying, I'm going to see you there, we'll see you there. People who are going to, some of the laity have been reaching out to friends and family and things like that. So I'm excited about this crowd that's going to come together, who may not know one another, who don't know me, I don't know them, but they're coming because, and I'm thinking about last Sunday, Pentecost Sunday, there's something drawing us together. There's something that is giving us this excitement and giving us this joy, giving us this hope that what we're doing is the beginning of something great. It's the beginning of a God thing, and we don't know what that's going to be, but we know it's going to be. We know it's going to be great. We know it's going to impact this community. So it's just excitement over the possibilities of God and the work of the Holy Spirit when we all come together with a single focus to lift up the name of Jesus and love like Jesus.
That's great. I mean, that's definitely something to be excited about. What are you excited about? What's your hope as you look to the future? What are you hopeful for, not just in our denomination, but in the work that you're doing that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, I think I mean, it's all the possibilities. I keep saying that I live in 3 different dimensions. The immediate right now, I have a sermon this coming Sunday, right? I have to preach.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be moving into a new location in August. So I've got to work 3 months ahead. But I'm also looking forward to this becoming a church that is not just in the immediate, in the near, but this is 5, 10, 50 years. So to see how God brings the people and the places and the resources and the opportunities so that we can be a church for our future, for the next generation.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm looking forward to watching, or the miracles that God does through this new church plant in our community, and how we can bring people together, not only other churches, but other community organizations, the local school district. We're working with a nonprofit called Chosen that gets gently used medical supplies into the hands of people in need. How can we be a church that's missional, right? We're going to meet the need of those around us in the name of Jesus. And so
I just doubled down on that. We've had a lot of young families that have started coming, and when I ask them, what's drawing you? One is community. They want their kids to be in community. I think COVID and the disconnection and everything is a part of that. They want to be in community. They're resonating with that message, and it's so funny to me that some people who attack the United Methodist Church, they say, "Oh, you're just becoming like the culture." And I think that we are actually countercultural more than anything, because what we're doing is we're saying you can be on this side and be together and be one church. And the culture's saying you can't. And so when churches split and they go into they're just choosing a lane because they've given in to the culture. And so you're being countercultural. No, say something. Go.
I really want to say this.
No,
okay,
you do. You need to. You can tell she was ready.
My mentor, Andrew Cooney, he's in the Baltimore Washington Conference, and I was talking to him about what we're doing and what's happening and all of the division. And he said this to me. He said, Jen, wasn't Jesus counterculture? And I said, yes. And he said, and what is our culture right now? And I said, it's divided. Everything is divided. It's not just in the church. Look outside of the church. Everyone's divided. And he said, okay. He said, if Jesus was counterculture, then be counterculture and don't be divided. Come together. And I'm like, thank you. That's what I needed. And I think that's what we're all longing for within and outside of the church.
And when you're talking about younger generation that's being turned off by organized religion, calling themselves nuns and duns, that's what they've been seeing. The hypocrisy that you say about love, you say about following Jesus, but you only operate in a way that benefits you. And if it's not good for you, then you don't want to have anything to do with somebody that's different than you. And that's around not just things going on in our church around human sexuality, but we've been dealing with it around race for many generations. We still don't have that right. And I even get a sense like in our culture now, there's a lot of this stuff going on. There's some racial stuff. I mean, it's you can sense it, right? There's a lot of this undercurrent is racial stuff. So it's like when we're coming together, people are resonating. Like my daughters, who are 25 and 22, and are still plugged into the church, they're looking at the church and they want a church that's got everybody in it, that is about Jesus, the words, the actions, the life, the ministry, modeling of Jesus. If you're going to do that, I want to be a part of that. If you're not going to do that, if you're just about yourself, I don't think I want to be a part of that. And I think that is what's going to speak to the generation. And the reason that churches haven't been speaking to them is because we've been more about us and our issues than that. How about you? What are you hopeful for?
A lot of the stuff that you guys already talked about. One of the key values that we have nailed down for Mosaic is inspiring inclusion. It's the very first one that we say. And we chose that verb inspiring very specifically because we want to be a place that inspires inclusion, that someone can see that there's inclusion within the space, but then our people go out into the worlds and whatever they go with their works and their homes, that they inspire inclusion in those spaces too, to promote the message that we're already doing each and every Sunday. So I think a lot of the stuff that you guys said, I'm absolutely excited about that. One of the biggest things for me is I've noticed over the last couple of weeks and months that the new guests that we're starting to get are people who have no idea what this affiliation even is. Like that word is not in their vocabulary.
through that.
No, and so they have no idea. And like I think of a story like Jack and Cindy Albers, who they were invited to our church by someone in their neighborhood, and Jack loves like pulling trailers. And we have this huge trailer that we have to use to set up worship every week, and you have to have a Ford F-250 to be able to pull it. He has one, and he immediately plugged in with the truck squad, and now they joined a couple of weeks ago, and they've been searching for a place to belong, a place of community where they can feel that in who they are, they belong in that place without any qualification. And so I'm excited to see how that continues to move past disaffiliation and start getting folks, those nuns and duns, and show them that church can be different. It doesn't have to be the way that you've seen it in the past or that you've directly experienced. Like there's this new avenue of hope for us. And so that's what excites me now.
I really appreciate y'all coming and sharing your story. I think it's inspiring, it's exciting, and you three are not the only ones doing this. There's a lot of this going on, and just in our conference, and I've heard in other conferences as well, a lot of this going on. And it's just, and I hear the same things echoing. There's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of hope. The people that are coming are inspiring pastors to say, wow, this is good. This might even be better than what I was doing before. But it is hard work, and I really appreciate y'all. I mean, I think people don't even know. It's hard enough to be a pastor, but when you're building something from the ground up, you know, it's like you do everything. Your job description's all inclusive. I really appreciate y'all coming and spending some time and sharing that with us. Anything else before we go?
Thank you,
Last words?
John, for giving us this
thank you.
opportunity
No,
to share
man,
the story.
I'm honored,
Yeah.
and just great to get this, to push it out to other people, because not everybody gets to sit down with you three and have this and hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
So to have everybody else get to hear you tell this story, I think is amazing. Well, we have a way we sign off on the podcast. Before I go, though, Jeff has to make me say this. Please subscribe, like, smash the like button, leave a 5-star rating, subscribe, share with your friends. Because apparently there's some like magical algorithm that when you do that, it makes it, I don't know, something. It's artificial intelligence. I have no idea what it is. But we have a way we sign off the podcast. I say my name, and then you say your name, right? So I'll go. I have to give direction because sometimes we don't. Me, you, and you, right? That's how we do it, and we sign off. You ready? Yes. Well, I'm John Stevens.
I'm Schuler Sitch.
I'm Jennifer Hodson.
David Briggs.
And this is Pod Have Mercy.